The storm raged across the surface of Kethvar as it had for thousands of years. Acid rain fell in sheets, eating through metal and stone alike. Lightning split the purple sky, illuminating the massive spires of the capital city. On any other world, such weather would mean death. Here it was just another Tuesday. War Prime Zekathara stood on the highest balcony of the command spire, letting the acid rain wash over his armored skin. The liquid that would burn through a human in seconds felt like a gentle massage to him. His people had evolved on this death world, and it had made them into something that other species could barely comprehend. The Kethmori were 8 feet tall, covered in natural armor plating that could stop most weapons. Their claws could slice through steel, and their minds could reach out and touch the thoughts of other beings across vast distances. They were perfect hunters, perfect warriors, perfect killers, and they ruled the galaxy because of it. War Prime, came a voice behind him. Zekathara turned to see Scout Hunter Crixel approaching. The smaller Kethmori moved with the fluid grace of a predator, even here in the heart of their empire. The council awaits your presence. Zekathara nodded and followed Crixel into the spire. The walls were decorated with trophies from 1,000 conquered worlds, skulls from dozens of species, weapons that had failed to stop Kethmori advances, and holographic displays showing the current extent of their empire. 40% of the known galaxy belonged to them now. Soon it would be more. The council chamber was a massive room carved from a single piece of black stone. Around the circular table sat the most powerful Kethmori in the empire. Military commanders, planetary governors, and at the head of the table, Dominion Speaker Velnash. Velnash was old, even by Kethmori standards. His armor plating had turned silver with age, and scars covered his arms from battles fought in his youth. But his mind was still sharp, and his telepathic abilities were among the strongest of their species. War Prime, Velnash said as Zekathara took his seat. Scout Hunter Crixel has news from the Outer Rim. Crixel stood and activated a holographic display in the center of the table. A spiral arm of the galaxy appeared, one that had been marked as unexplored on their maps for generations. My long-range scouts have detected something interesting, Crixel began. Energy signatures consistent with faster-than-light travel. A new species has achieved interstellar flight. Murmurs ran around the table. New species were always valuable. They could provide new slaves, new resources, new worlds to add to the empire. What do we know about them? Asked General Mortek, a scarred veteran of the Zephani conquest. Very little, Crixel admitted. They call themselves humans. They appear to be from a single world recently unified. Their technology is primitive compared to ours, but they have achieved FTL capability faster than most species. How fast? Velnash asked, his mental voice carrying undertones of curiosity. Their entire technological development has taken less than 10,000 years. Most species take at least 50,000 to reach this point. More murmurs. That was unusually quick but not unheard of. Some species developed faster than others, usually because they were naturally aggressive or faced external pressures. Numbers? Zekathara asked. Approximately 8 billion on their homeworld. Small colonies in their local system. Perhaps a few exploration ships in nearby systems. Zekathara leaned back in his chair. 8 billion was a decent population for slaves, but nothing spectacular. The hegemony worlds had populations in the hundreds of billions. Resistance capabilities? Asked Admiral Kethran. Unknown, but likely minimal. They have only recently achieved FTL. Their weapons technology appears to be chemical-based projectiles and primitive energy weapons. No evidence of telepathic abilities or advanced defensive systems. Standard conquest protocol, then, Velnash declared. Admiral Kethran, prepare a subjugation fleet. The usual size should be sufficient. Admiral Kethran nodded. A standard subjugation fleet consisted of 12 dreadnoughts, 40 cruisers, and support vessels. It was a force that had broken the will of every species they had ever encountered. The sight of Kethmori ships appearing in their skies was usually enough to make entire civilizations surrender without a fight. When shall we begin? Kethran asked. Within the month, Velnash decided. This species is young and small. Better to take them now before they spread too far, or develop more advanced weapons. The council members began to discuss the details of the conquest. How many slaves would be taken? Which worlds would be suitable for Kethmori colonization? What resources might be available? It was a conversation they had had hundreds of times before. But Scout Hunter Crixel remained silent, studying the data from his scouts. Something about these humans bothered him, though he could not say what. Their technological development was fast, yes, but there was something else. The way their ships moved in the limited footage his scouts had gathered. The patterns of their communications. Something was different about them. Is there something else, Scout Hunter? Velnash asked, his telepathic abilities easily picking up Crixel's unease. Perhaps nothing, Dominion Speaker, but my scouts noted some unusual behavior patterns. The humans seemed to explore differently than other species. How so? Most species, when they achieve FTL, send out careful, planned expeditions to nearby systems. They map resources, establish trade routes, expand slowly and methodically. Yes, that is the logical approach. What do these humans do? They seem to explore randomly, ships going in all directions with no apparent plan. Some of their expeditions have no obvious purpose at all. They sent a ship to study a dead star system with no planets. Another expedition went to catalog space creatures in an asteroid belt. General Mortek laughed, a sound like grinding stone. Sounds like they are simply stupid. Perhaps, Crixel said. But they also responded to first contact with one of my scout ships in an unexpected way. The room fell silent. First contact was always a delicate moment, and scout ships were specifically designed to observe without being detected. Explain, Zekthara commanded. My scout was discovered while observing one of their colony ships. Instead of fleeing or attacking, the humans tried to communicate. They broadcast mathematical sequences, musical patterns, even images of their world and people. They revealed information about themselves to an unknown contact? Admiral Kethran asked in disbelief. Yes. And when my scout did not respond and began to withdraw, they followed. Not aggressively, but persistently. They seemed genuinely curious about us. The room was quiet for a moment. In all their history, the Kethmori had never encountered a species that responded to first contact with curiosity, rather than fear or aggression. Irrelevant, Velnash finally declared. Curiosity will not stop our dreadnoughts. If anything, it makes them easier prey. A curious species is a distracted species. The council members nodded in agreement. They had seen it all before. Young species always thought they were unique, special, destined for greatness. The Zephani had thought their crystal technology made them invincible. The Merdun had believed their underwater cities were impregnable. The Thexai had trusted in their hive mind to coordinate perfect defenses. All of them had learned the same lesson in the end. Nothing in the universe could stand against the Kethmori Empire. Nothing was strong enough, smart enough, or fierce enough to resist them. As the council dispersed and began making preparations for another routine conquest, none of them noticed the small detail buried in Scout Hunter Crixel's report. When the human ship had tried to communicate, it had broadcast on over 1,000 different frequencies simultaneously. Most species used one or two communication methods. These humans seemed to be talking to everyone, all at once, as if they expected the entire universe to be listening. Within days, the subjugation fleet would begin its journey to the human homeworld. It would be, they all agreed, a simple and quick addition to their empire. They had no idea that they were about to encounter something that would change everything they thought they knew about strength, fear, and what it meant to be the hunters in the dark. The Kethmori subjugation fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the human solar system, like a storm of living nightmares. 12 massive dreadnoughts led the formation, each one 3 kilometers long and bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Behind them came the cruisers, sleek and deadly, designed to hunt down any ships that tried to flee. Admiral Kethran stood on the bridge of his flagship, the World Breaker, and watched the human homeworld grow larger on his screens. It was a blue and green planet, soft and inviting. No acid storms, no crushing gravity, no deadly radiation. A paradise world that had bred a soft species. Begin the fear broadcast, he ordered. Throughout the fleet, massive transmitters came online. They sent out waves of telepathic energy designed to trigger the deepest, most primal fears in any thinking creature. It was a weapon that had never failed. Entire species had surrendered the moment they felt the touch of Kethmori minds against their own. The effect on humans was immediate, but not what the Kethmori expected. Admiral, reported Communications Officer Velsith, confusion clear in her mental voice. The humans they're responding to our contact. Surrendering already? Kethran asked with satisfaction. Good. Record their submission for the archive. No, sir. They're not surrendering. They're talking to us. On the main screen, text appeared in dozens of languages, mathematical formulas, scientific data, even what appeared to be poetry and music. The humans were trying to communicate. Ignore it, Catherine commanded. Begin standard intimidation approach. Show them our weapons. The fleet moved deeper into the system, weapons powering up, targeting systems locking onto human installations. On every world the Kethmori had conquered, this was the moment when resistance collapsed. The moment when the prey species realized they were facing predators beyond their imagination. Instead, alarms began sounding across the Kethmori fleet. "Admiral," called Tactical Officer Mortian. "Human ships approaching. Multiple vectors. How many?" 347 vessels. Catherine almost laughed. The humans were actually going to fight, with less than 400 ships against a force that had conquered half the galaxy. What classes? "Mixed types, sir. Some appear to be military vessels, but many are converted civilian ships. Cargo haulers, science vessels, even what appear to be passenger transports." "They're sending civilians to fight us?" Catherine asked in disbelief. "It appears so, sir." The human fleet approached in a formation that made no sense to Kethmori military doctrine. Instead of concentrating their strongest ships in a spearhead formation, they spread out in a wide arc. Small ships mixed with large ones. Fast interceptors flew alongside slow cargo vessels. "Open communications," Catherine ordered. "Let's hear what these primitives have to say before we destroy them." The main screen filled with the image of a human female. She wore a uniform of dark blue with insignia that the Kethmori computers couldn't identify. Her hair was gray, her face lined with age, but her eyes were steady and unafraid. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force," she said. "You have entered our space with weapons powered and targeting our worlds. State your intentions." Catherine stepped forward, letting his full 8-foot height dominate the screen. He allowed his natural armor to gleam in the bridge lights and extended his claws slightly. It was a display that had made entire planetary councils flee in terror. The human admiral looked at him with what appeared to be scientific curiosity. "I am Admiral Kethron of the Kethmori Empire," he said, his voice a low growl that carried undertones of telepathic menace. "Your species will surrender immediately and submit to imperial rule. Resistance will result in total annihilation." Admiral Chen nodded thoughtfully. "I see. Well, Admiral Kethron, I'm afraid I must decline your offer. This system is under the protection of the United Earth Defense Force, and we do not submit to threats." "You do not understand," Kethron said, increasing the telepathic pressure. "We have conquered 400 species across 10,000 years. Your primitive weapons cannot harm us. Surrender now, and some of your kind may be permitted to live as slaves." "Admiral," Chen replied, "you seem like a reasonable being, so I'll be direct with you. We've analyzed your ships during your approach. Your technology is impressive but not insurmountable. More importantly, we've detected your telepathic broadcasts." Catherine felt a flicker of surprise. Most species couldn't even detect telepathic energy, let alone analyze it. "Your fear weapons don't work on humans the way you expect," Chen continued. "We've been studying your transmissions since you entered our space. Fascinating technology, really. But here's the thing about humans, Admiral. We've been afraid of things our entire evolutionary history. Big predators, natural disasters, the dark death itself. Fear is nothing new to us." "You will learn true fear," Catherine snarled. "Perhaps. But fear has never stopped humans from fighting when we needed to. In fact, it usually makes us more dangerous." Catherine cut the communication. "Enough talk. It was time to show these primitives what real power looked like. All ships open fire. Destroy half their fleet. Leave the rest alive to witness their helplessness." The Kethmori dreadnoughts unleashed a barrage that lit up space. Energy beams that could melt asteroids lanced out toward the human fleet. Missiles that carried enough explosive power to level cities streaked through the void. The human response was unlike anything in Kethmori military records. Instead of trying to defend against the overwhelming firepower, the human ships scattered in all directions. Small, fast vessels darted between the energy beams while larger ships used themselves as shields to protect smaller ones. Ships that were hit and crippled didn't retreat. Instead, their crews guided them on collision courses with Kethmori vessels. "Sir," Tactical Officer Mortian called out, "the humans are ramming our ships." "Impossible. No species is that reckless, and sir, I'm reading multiple impacts. The humans are using damaged vessels as weapons." On the tactical display, Catherine watched a human cargo hauler, its hull breached and bleeding atmosphere, slam into the side of a Kethmori cruiser. The explosion took out both ships, but the human vessel had been doomed anyway. They had traded a dying ship for a healthy enemy vessel. "Admiral," came another report. "We're receiving transmissions from the human ships. They're broadcasting tactical data to each other, in the open. They want us to hear it." "What kind of tactical data?" "Everything, sir. Our weapons patterns, shield frequencies, engine signatures. Every ship that engages us is reporting what they learned to the entire human fleet." Keth Rand felt something he had never experienced before. Uncertainty. The humans were learning and adapting faster than any species he had ever fought. Each engagement taught them something new, and they shared that knowledge instantly with every other ship in their fleet. The battle continued for 3 hours. When it ended, the human fleet was destroyed. Every ship had been reduced to debris or drifting hulks. But they had taken 47 Kethmori vessels with them, including 2 cruisers and a dreadnought. No species had ever inflicted such casualties on a Kethmori subjugation fleet. "Admiral," Communications Officer Velsith reported. "We're receiving a final transmission from the human homeworld. Put it through." Admiral Chen appeared on the screen again. This time she was clearly on a planet's surface, standing in what looked like an empty city. "Admiral Kethran," she said, "by now you've probably discovered that Earth has been evacuated. Our entire population was moved to secure locations the moment we detected your approach." "It will not matter," Kethran replied. "We will hunt you down wherever you hide." "Perhaps you will," Chen agreed. "But you should know something about humans, Admiral. We don't just prepare for wars. We prepare for everything. Every disaster, every possible threat, every scenario we can imagine. Your preparations will not save you." Chen smiled, and there was something in that expression that made Kethran's skin crawl. "Our children are already among the stars, Admiral. Scattered across 100 worlds you don't know exist, and they've been warned about you. We will find them all. Maybe. But here's what you need to understand about humanity. You've just declared war on a species that has been fighting wars for thousands of years. Wars against nature, against predators, against disease, against each other. We know how to fight, Admiral. We know how to suffer. We know how to endure." The transmission flickered and Chen's image began to fade. More importantly, her voice continued. "We know how to learn. Every battle teaches us something new about you. Every defeat makes us stronger. You think you're the hunters, Admiral? But you've never faced prey that hunts back." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge of the Worldbreaker in silence. For the first time in his long career, Admiral Kethran wondered if perhaps they had made a mistake. In the debris field where the human fleet had made its last stand, automated beacons continued broadcasting. Not distress calls, but detailed analysis of Kethmori weapons, tactics, and ship designs. The data streamed out into space, carried by faster-than-light communications to destinations unknown. The humans had lost the battle, but they had turned their defeat into a lesson for everyone who came after them. And somewhere in the dark between the stars, that lesson was being learned. 6 months after the destruction of the human fleet, War Prime Zekthara led the full conquest armada toward Earth. 500 ships strong, it was a force that could have reduced entire star systems to rubble. As they approached the blue world that had given birth to humanity, every sensor was focused on detecting the desperate defenses of a broken species. Instead, they found nothing. "Report," Zekthara commanded from the bridge of his flagship. "The death of worlds. Planetary scan complete." "War Prime," reported sensor operator Thekval. "The planet shows signs of recent massive evacuation. All major cities are empty. No defensive installations detected. No orbital platforms. No resistance. Population? Approximately 50,000 individuals scattered across rural areas, mostly elderly and infirm who were unable to travel." Zekthara stared at the peaceful blue world on his screen. This was wrong. Conquered species always made a final desperate stand at their homeworld. They gathered their remaining forces, fortified their cities, fought to the last breath to protect the world that gave them birth. Humans had simply left. "War Prime," came another report. "Long-range sensors are detecting human settlements across 47 star systems. They appear to have established colonies throughout this entire region of space." 47 systems in 6 months? Zekthara asked in disbelief. "Yes, sir. Our scouts report that they're using modified cargo vessels as colony ships. Fast deployment, minimal infrastructure. They seemed to be spreading as widely as possible rather than building strong, defendable positions. It was the opposite of every military doctrine the Kethmori had ever encountered. When faced with a superior enemy, you consolidated your forces, built strong defenses, made them pay for every world they took. You didn't scatter like leaves in the wind. Begin systematic elimination, Zekthara ordered. We'll hunt them down one colony at a time. The campaign that followed was unlike anything in Kethmori military history. The first human colony they attacked was called New Geneva. The Kethmori fleet arrived expecting to find a hastily built settlement with minimal defenses. Instead, they found a trap. The colonists had spent months preparing. They had studied every scrap of data from the first battle, analyzed every Kethmori weapon signature, learned from every tactical mistake. When the Imperial fleet moved in to begin bombardment, hidden weapons platforms opened fire from asteroid fields and dead moons. The humans had learned to fight like Kethmori, using stealth and ambush tactics. But they had added something new, sacrifice, war prime, called Tactical Officer Morith. Human ships are ramming our vessels again. Multiple impacts across the fleet. Destroy them all, Zekthara snarled. Sir, they're not trying to escape. They're using their ships as guided missiles. They're targeting our command vessels specifically. On the tactical display, Zekthara watched a human destroyer, its hull cracked and bleeding atmosphere, slam into the bridge section of a Kethmori dreadnought. The explosion destroyed both ships, but the human vessel had been doomed from the start. They had traded one dying ship for a command vessel worth 50 times as much. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, New Geneva was a smoking ruin. But the Kethmori had lost 30 ships, including 3 command vessels. The humans had lost everything, but they had broadcast every moment of the battle to the rest of their scattered colonies. The next attack was worse. At the colony of Haven, the humans had learned from New Geneva's sacrifice. This time they didn't just fight. They evacuated their population to hidden ships during the battle, then detonated their entire settlement as the Kethmori moved in to claim it. The explosion was nuclear in scale, taking out 2 cruisers and damaging a dozen more. They're destroying their own worlds rather than let us have them, Admiral Kethron reported during a fleet conference. This is not rational behavior. It's perfectly rational, Scout Hunter Crixel replied. He had been studying human tactics for months now, trying to understand their patterns. They're denying us resources while gathering intelligence. Every battle teaches them more about us while costing us ships we can't easily replace. We have the largest fleet in the galaxy, War Prime Zekthara said. We can afford losses, can we? Crixel asked. We've lost over 200 ships in 6 months of fighting. Most species surrender after losing 20. The humans have lost thousands of ships and show no signs of stopping. The truth was becoming unavoidable. Humanity was adapting to fight the Kethmori faster than any species in recorded history. Each engagement revealed new tactics, new technologies, new ways of turning weakness into strength. At the Colony of Freedom, the humans unveiled something that shook the Empire to its core: reverse-engineered Kethmori technology. How is this possible? Zekthara demanded, staring at sensor readings that showed human ships firing Kethmori-style energy weapons. They've been salvaging our wrecks, Crixel explained, but they're not just copying our technology. They're improving it. These weapons have a 15% higher energy output than our standard armaments. In 6 months, they've not only learned to build our weapons but made them better. Yes, War Prime. And they're sharing the technology across all their colonies. What one human settlement learns, they all learn. But the worst discovery came 3 months later, during the attack on the colony of Sanctuary. The Kethmori fleet arrived to find the settlement defended not just by humans, but by ships from a dozen other species. Zephani crystal vessels flew alongside human destroyers. Merdun bioships coordinated with human carriers. Even some hegemony cruisers, supposedly loyal subjects of the Empire, had joined the human defense fleet. What is this? Zekthara roared. Sir, reported Communications Officer Velsith, we're receiving a transmission from the defense fleet. Multiple species are broadcasting. Put it through. The screen filled with multiple images. Humans, yes, but also Zephani crystalline beings, aquatic Meridan, and even what appeared to be a Kethmori officer. Greetings, War Prime Zekthara, said a human female.
I am Captain Maria Santos of the Terran Defense Corps. These are my allies, Commander Zelthar of the Free Zephani,
Admiral Murgoth of the liberated Merdun, and Scout Hunter Crixel of the Keth Mori Liberation Front. Zekthara felt his world tilt. Crixel? What is the meaning of this treason? Crixel stepped forward on the screen. His armor bore new markings, symbols that the computer identified as human military decorations. It is not treason, War Prime. It is evolution. The humans have shown us something we never knew existed. The concept that the strong should protect the weak instead of dominating them. You have been corrupted by alien influence. I have been educated, Crixel replied calmly. These humans saved my life when my scout ship was damaged in an asteroid field. They could have taken me prisoner, interrogated me, executed me. Instead, they repaired my ship and offered me a choice: return to the Empire or learn a different way to live. And you chose betrayal. I chose hope. The battle that followed was a nightmare for the Keth Mori. The Alliance fleet fought with coordinated precision, each species contributing their unique strengths to a combined strategy. Zephani crystal technology amplified human weapons. Merdun bioships provided organic shielding that could regenerate damage. Keth Mori defectors shared intelligence about Imperial fleet movements and weaknesses. For the first time in their 10,000-year history, the Keth Mori retreated from a battle. As the Imperial fleet limped away from Sanctuary, reports began flooding in from across the Empire. Rebellions on 17 worlds, slave species declaring independence, Imperial garrisons under attack by their own subjects. How widespread is this? Zekthara asked during an emergency council session. The human infection has spread across 40% of our subject species, reported Intelligence Commander Veldash. They're calling it the Liberation Network. Every species the humans contact seems to join their cause. How are they converting our subjects so quickly? They're not converting them, War Prime. They're inspiring them. The humans broadcast messages throughout our space telling subject species that freedom is possible, that the strong can choose to help the weak instead of enslaving them. Dominion Speaker Velnash, who had remained silent throughout the briefing, finally spoke. We are not fighting a military enemy. We are fighting an idea, and ideas are harder to kill than ships. What do you recommend? Zekthara asked. Total extermination, Velnash replied. If we cannot control humanity, we must eliminate them completely. And every species they have touched with their poison. That would mean destroying half our empire. Better half an empire than no empire at all. As the council debated genocide, none of them noticed the small detail in the intelligence reports. The human broadcasts weren't just reaching subject species. They were reaching Keth Mori colonies as well. And on 17 different worlds, young Keth Mori were beginning to ask questions their elders had never asked. Questions like, why do we rule through fear? And, what would happen if we tried to rule through hope instead? The infection was spreading faster than anyone realized. And for the first time in their history, some Keth Mori were beginning to wonder if their empire was strong because it inspired fear, or simply because no one had ever shown them an alternative. Deep in the records of the Imperial Archive, a disturbing pattern was emerging. Every species the Keth Mori had ever conquered had fought along. 3 years had passed since the first human ship tried to communicate with a Keth Mori scout, and the galaxy was burning. What had begun as a simple conquest had become something the Keth Mori Empire had never faced, a war of ideas. Across 40% of Imperial space, subject species were in open rebellion. Slave worlds declared independence. Tribute fleets never arrived at their destinations. Imperial garrisons found themselves surrounded by populations that had learned a new word from the humans: freedom. In the Imperial capital on Kethvar, Dominion Speaker Velnash stood before a holographic map that showed the extent of the crisis. Red markers indicated worlds in rebellion. Yellow showed systems where Imperial control was weakening. Green marked worlds still loyal to the Empire. There was far too much red and yellow, and the green was shrinking every day. Report, he commanded. General Mortek, scarred veteran of a dozen conquests, stepped forward. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by something that would have been unthinkable 3 years ago: uncertainty. The situation continues to deteriorate, Dominion Speaker. We've lost contact with the hegemony worlds in the outer spiral. The Zephani have declared their independence and are actively fighting alongside human forces. The Merdun have abandoned their tribute obligations and retreated to their deep ocean worlds. What about our own forces? That's More complicated, Mortek hesitated. We've had 17 cases of Kethmori units refusing orders to bombard civilian populations. 12 incidents of crews releasing prisoners instead of executing them. And yesterday, the entire 4th Scout Wing defected to join what they're calling the Liberation Alliance. Velnash felt something cold settle in his stomach. Kethmori did not refuse orders. Kethmori did not show mercy to enemies. Kethmori certainly did not defect to join rebellions. How? He asked. The human influence is spreading through our ranks, admitted Intelligence Commander Veldash. They don't use telepathic control or chemical conditioning like other species have tried. They use something far more dangerous. Examples. Explain. Veldash activated a holographic display showing a recent battle report. Last month, the cruiser Bone Crusher was disabled during an engagement with human forces. Standard protocol would be for the humans to destroy the ship or take prisoners for interrogation. Instead, they rescued the entire crew from life support failure, provided medical treatment, and released them with a message. What message? That the strong should protect the weak, not prey upon them. That true strength comes from choosing when not to kill, not from being able to kill everything you encounter. Velnash studied the report in silence. The Bone Crusher incident wasn't isolated. Across the war zone, humans consistently showed mercy to defeated enemies, rescued civilians from combat zones, and treated prisoners with what they called dignity. It was behavior that made no sense from a military perspective, but it was having devastating effects on Kethmori morale. There's more, Veldash continued. The humans have been broadcasting throughout our space. Not propaganda or threats, but stories. Stories? Accounts of their history. Wars they've fought, not for conquest, but to protect others. Disasters they've overcome through cooperation. Times when their strongest leaders chose to help the weak instead of dominating them. On the display, images flashed past. Humans rescuing others from natural disasters. Humans sharing food during famines. Humans building schools and hospitals on worlds that had never known such things. It was a vision of strength used for protection rather than domination. And it was spreading through the Empire like a virus, sir, Veldash added quietly. We've detected these broadcasts being received and retransmitted by 17 of our own worlds. Some Kethmori are beginning to ask why we rule through fear when we could rule through hope. The blasphemy of it struck Velnash like a physical blow. The Kethmori ruled because they were superior. They conquered because it was their nature. They had built the greatest empire in galactic history because they were the apex predators of the universe. But the humans were showing an alternative, and that alternative was proving dangerously attractive. Where is War Prime Zekthara? Velnash asked. Leading the assault on the human stronghold at New Terra, Mortek replied. He's been gone for 2 months. New Terra was the largest human colony, home to nearly 1 billion refugees from Earth and a dozen other worlds. It was the heart of the Liberation Alliance, protected by the most powerful fleet the humans had ever assembled. If Zekthara could break it, the rebellion might collapse, but if he failed... Dominion speaker, came an urgent call from the communications center. Priority transmission from War Prime Zekthara. Put it through. The holographic display shifted to show the bridge of the death of worlds. Zekthara stood at the center, but something was wrong. His armor was scorched, his claws were stained with his own blood, and his eyes held something that had never been there before. Doubt. Dominion speaker, Zekthara said, his mental voice heavy with exhaustion. I must report the failure of the New Terra assault. Define failure. We breached their outer defenses, but the cost was unprecedented. They've developed new weapons, new tactics. Ships that sacrifice themselves to save others. Pilots who ram their fighters into our dreadnoughts without hesitation. They fight not just to win, but to give time for their civilians to escape. Acceptable casualties are expected in war. Velnash, Zekthara said, using the Dominion speaker's name without honorific for the first time in memory. I lost 60% of my fleet. 60%, against a force half our size. And in the end, they escaped. All of them. Every civilian, every non-combatant, every child. They sacrificed their entire fleet to buy time for evacuation ships to reach safety. The bridge fell silent. A 60% loss rate was catastrophic. The Kethmori had never suffered such casualties in any single engagement. But worse than the casualties, Zekthara continued, was what happened afterward. When we moved to secure the colony, we found that they had left behind supplies, medical equipment, food, even entertainment materials. And a message. What kind of message? An invitation. They invited us to join their alliance. They said that any Kethemori who wanted to learn a different way of living would be welcome among them. They offered to teach us how to use our strength to protect instead of dominate. Velnash felt his worldview cracking like ice under pressure. And 47 of my crew requested transfer to the human fleet. The admission hung in the air like a death sentence. Kethemori warriors, elite soldiers of the greatest empire in galactic history, had chosen to join their enemies rather than continue fighting them. Sir, came another voice from the communications center. We're receiving multiple priority signals from across the empire. Rebellions have broken out on 39 worlds in the last hour. The governors are requesting immediate military assistance. Velnash looked at the tactical display. Red markers were spreading across the map like a plague. Each one represented a world where the human idea of cooperative strength had taken hold. Each one was a piece of the empire choosing hope over fear. Sir, came yet another report. Long-range scanners are detecting a massive fleet movement in the liberated territories. Intelligence estimates put it at over 2,000 ships. Multiple species all flying human liberation symbols. Destination? Unknown, but their course suggests they're heading for the core worlds. The core worlds. The heart of the Kethemori Empire. Worlds that had been under imperial control for thousands of years. That had never known anything but Kethemori rule. If the Liberation Alliance reached the core worlds, if they brought their message of hope and cooperation to populations that had never imagined an alternative to imperial domination, the empire would not survive. Velnash, came Zekthara's voice from the display. I need to tell you something else. Something I discovered during the New Terra assault. Report. The humans didn't just evacuate their own people. They evacuated 17,000 Kethemori civilians who had been living on the colony world. Families of defectors, refugees from our own empire who had joined them seeking a different life. That's impossible. No Kethemori would. They did. And when I interrogated the prisoners we took, they told me why. They said the humans had shown them that they could be strong without being cruel. That they could protect their children without teaching them to prey on others. Velnash stared at the tactical display, watching red markers multiply across the map. For 10,000 years, the Kethemori Empire had been built on a simple principle. The strong dominated the weak because that was the natural order of the universe. But humanity had introduced a different principle. The strong protected the weak because that was the right thing to do. And that simple difference was destroying everything the Kethemori had built. War Prime, Velnash said finally. Return to the capital. We need to consider alternatives. What kind of alternatives? Velnash looked at the spreading rebellion, at the reports of his own people choosing hope over fear, at the approaching alliance fleet that carried a message more dangerous than any weapon. Perhaps, he said slowly, it's time we learned what the humans have been trying to teach. The final battle began at the edge of the Kethvar system, where the ancient homeworld of the Empire waited like a storm-shrouded fortress among the stars. War Prime Zekthara stood on the bridge of his rebuilt flagship, watching the approaching fleet that would decide the fate of the galaxy. 2,000 ships filled the sensor screens. Human vessels flew alongside Zephani crystal ships, Mirdoon biocruisers, and dozens of other species that had joined what everyone now called the Liberation Alliance. But most shocking of all were the Kethemori ships scattered throughout the fleet, bearing the symbols of their own people who had chosen a different path. Final count? Zekthara asked. 2,317 vessels, reported Tactical Officer Morshin. 67 different species and War Prime. We're detecting 349 ships of Kethemori design. Nearly 350 ships crewed by his own people, coming to attack their homeworld. A year ago, Zekthara would have called it impossible. Now he simply accepted it as the price of the choice they had made. Our forces? 800 ships, all loyal units. The core defense fleet, the Imperial Guard, and what remains of the conquest armadas. 800 against 2,300. In any normal war, those odds would mean certain defeat. But this was not a normal war, and the Kethemori were not normal warriors. They were the apex predators of the galaxy, fighting for their very existence. War Prime, came a transmission from the approaching fleet. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Liberation Alliance. Request permission to address you directly. Zekthara almost laughed. Even now, at the moment of final battle, The humans were asking permission instead of simply attacking. It was so perfectly human that it hurt. Granted, he replied. The screen filled with the image of the human admiral who had become the symbol of resistance across the galaxy. She looked older now, marked by 3 years of constant warfare. But her eyes still held that steady determination that had first puzzled him so long ago. Admiral Chen, Zekthara said, I assume you're here to demand our surrender. Actually, War Prime, I'm here to offer you one last chance to join us instead of fighting us. The words hit him like a physical blow. Even now, even after everything the Empire had done, the humans were offering mercy. Join you? We are the Kethmori Empire. We do not join others. We conquer them. I know, Chen replied sadly, and that's exactly why your empire is dying, War Prime. You've spent 10,000 years teaching the galaxy to fear you, but you never learned how to inspire anyone to follow you willingly. Fear is efficient. Fear is reliable. Fear is brittle, Chen countered. The moment someone shows people an alternative, fear becomes useless. That's what we've done, War Prime. We've shown the galaxy that there's another way to be strong. Behind Chen, Zekthara could see other figures on the bridge. Humans, yes, but also Zephani, Merdun, and Scout Hunter Crixel, wearing the uniform of the Liberation Alliance, Crixel. Zekthara said, Any final words before you help destroy our people? Crixel stepped forward, and Zekthara was shocked to see that his old comrade looked peaceful, happy even. War Prime, Crixel said, I'm not here to destroy our people. I'm here to save them, to show them that we can be something more than predators. We can be protectors. Protectors of what? Of everything, Zekthara. The weak, the small, the frightened. All the things we used to prey upon. The humans taught me that true strength isn't about being able to kill anything you want. It's about choosing what deserves to live. Sentiment will not win this battle. Perhaps not, Admiral Chen interjected. But hope will. War Prime, look at your sensors. Really look at them. Zekthara frowned and checked the tactical display. The Alliance fleet was spread across a wide front, just as human fleets always arranged themselves. Mixed ship types, seemingly random formations, no clear strategy. Then he saw it. They're not attacking, he said in disbelief. No, Chen confirmed. We're not. War Prime, we didn't come here to conquer Kethvar. We came here to liberate it, including liberating you. That makes no sense. This is your chance to destroy the Empire once and for all. We don't want to destroy the Empire, War Prime. We want to transform it. The galaxy needs the Kethmori. You're strong, you're capable, you're natural leaders. But the galaxy needs you to lead toward something better than endless conquest. On the tactical display, Zekthara watched the Alliance fleet maintain its position. They weren't advancing, weren't powering weapons, weren't preparing for attack. They were just waiting. What do you want from us? He asked. We want you to choose, Chen replied. You can fight us and we'll defend ourselves. Some of us will die, some of you will die, and in the end, nothing will be better. Or you can choose to learn what we've been trying to teach you for 3 years, which is that cooperation is stronger than domination, that protecting others is more fulfilling than preying on them, that the strongest thing you can do is choose mercy when you have the power to destroy. Zekthara looked around his bridge at his loyal crew, warriors who had followed him through a dozen campaigns, who had never known defeat, who were ready to die fighting rather than surrender to an enemy. But as he looked at them, he realized something that shook him to his core. They weren't afraid. His people, the apex predators of the galaxy, weren't afraid of dying in battle. They were afraid of living differently. War Prime, came a hesitant voice from his communications officer. We're receiving signals from the planet. Multiple cities they're requesting to speak with the Alliance fleet. What, sir? It appears that Kethmori civilians on the homeworld want to hear what the humans have to say. The betrayal cut deep. Even here, on their own homeworld, the human infection was spreading. His own people were choosing hope over fear. Admiral Chen, Zekthara said slowly, what happens if we refuse? If we choose to fight? Then we fight, Chen replied simply. And thousands die on both sides. And afterward, whoever survives will have to live with the knowledge that all those deaths accomplished nothing except proving that killing is easier than changing. And if we consider your offer, then we start building something new together. A galaxy where the strong protect the weak instead of preying on them, where different species work together instead of one dominating all the others, where the Kethmori are respected not because they're feared, but because they choose to use their strength wisely. Zekthara closed his eyes and felt the weight of 10,000 years of imperial history pressing down on him. His ancestors had built the greatest empire in galactic history through strength, cunning, and ruthless determination. They had created order from chaos, imposed their will on an unruly universe, proved that the strong deserved to rule. But they had also created a galaxy where billions lived in fear, where entire species existed only to serve Kethmori interests, where the only peace was the peace of submission. War Prime, came Crixel's voice from the screen. I know what you're thinking. I had the same thoughts when the humans first showed me kindness instead of killing me. You're thinking that everything we are, everything we've built depends on being the predators, doesn't it? No, Crixel said firmly. Everything we are depends on being strong enough to choose our own path. For 10,000 years, we chose the path of conquest because we thought it was the only way to be strong. But the humans showed us another path. One where we're still strong, still leaders, still important, but where we lead others toward hope instead of driving them toward fear. And you believe this cooperation is superior to domination? I know it is, Crixel replied, because I've lived both ways now, and the second way is better. Zekthara opened his eyes and looked at the tactical display one more time. 2,000 ships waiting patiently for his decision. Ships filled with beings from across the galaxy, former enemies and former slaves, all united by a simple idea, that the strong should protect the weak. It was an idea so foreign to everything he had been taught that it felt like madness. It was also an idea that had brought the greatest empire in galactic history to its knees. Admiral Chen, he said finally, if we were to consider this alliance of yours, what would be expected of us? The same thing we expect of everyone, Chen replied. To protect those who can't protect themselves. To share your strength instead of hoarding it. To choose hope over fear whenever possible. And our empire would become something new. A confederation instead of an empire. A cooperation instead of a conquest. Led by beings who choose to serve others instead of ruling them. Zekthara looked around his bridge one more time. His crew watched him with expressions he had never seen before. Not fear, not anger, but curiosity. They wanted to know what this new way of living might be like. All ships, he said into his communication system, stand down weapons. Prepare for diplomatic contact. On the screen, Admiral Chen smiled. Welcome to the Liberation Alliance, War Prime. Now let's start building something better. As the fleets moved together in space above Kethvar, something unprecedented happened. For the first time in galactic history, apex predators chose to become protectors instead of hunters. And the universe held its breath to see what they might build together. Thank you for watching and comment for next part.